laborers. They weren't garrison troops. They were soldiers, armed soldiers. Such onerous work details and generally insufficient and inferior regimental medical care contributed to black soldiers suffering from significantly higher morbidity and mortality than whites. Approximately 1 in 5 black soldiers died from disease. That's 1 in 5 black soldiers died from disease as compared to roughly 1 of every 12 white soldiers. Though nearly 40,000 of the black soldiers who served in the Army died, 40,000 of the black soldiers who served in the Army died, only 2,700, I should say, only 2,751 were killed in action. So most of the black soldiers who are allegedly died, I say allegedly because they were reported missing. During many of these battles, we don't know actually what happened to many people. And if they couldn't be recorded, they were listed as having died. But of the rest, the difference between the 2,700 and the 40,000 died from disease, infections, or wounds. Mid-19th century medical care was of very limited ability to deal with gunshot wounds, disease, and infections. The black troops' woefully indiscriminatory medical care resulted in more than 29,000 of men dying from these recorded ailments: pneumonia, dysentery, typhoid fever, and malaria. Very few surgeons will do precisely the same for blacks as they would for whites, remarked a surgeon assigned to a U.S. colored troop regiment in 1863. The mortality in our regiment beats anything I ever saw, recorded another officer assigned to a USCT unit in Louisiana. They frequently drop dead in the streets, and in 2 or 3 instances have been found laying dead in the weeds some distance from camp. People just collapsed and died. The 56th USCT, for example, which served mostly in Helena, Arkansas, lost only 25 officers and men in its limited military engagements, but suffered the loss of 653 men alone from disease. In October 1864, a military medical board reported that undiagnosed disease ravaged 3 Missouri black regiments, the 62nd, the 65th, and the 67th USCT. Units subjected to continuous labor at Morganzia, Louisiana. Sickness wiped out 1/3 of the enlistees. Later in the war, Adjutant General Lorenzo Thomas, who did an inspection tour of all the black units in the Mississippi River Valley, he inspected a USCT hospital in Nashville and observed, in his words, lice-infested wards with men still clothed in their blood-soaked uniforms that they had worn in battle. Words, General Thomas explained, cannot describe the utter filthiness of what I saw. Had these men been white soldiers, he added, think you this would have been their condition? No, he said, and put an exclamation point in his report. Because many military administrators considered black troops inferior to whites, and because the War Department initially defined blacks primarily as military laborers, not soldiers, from the start of the service, African American units commonly received inadequate war material, rations, and weapons. Typical of the black military experience, the 5th USCT, a regiment of black Ohioans, endured deficient housing and insufficient clothing and equipage, forcing its commander, Lieutenant Colonel Giles Sirtliff, to improvise. Although the USCT reportedly received the regular Army ration, reportedly provided white troops, the daily allotment of beef and starches catered more to the dietary preferences of white and black Northerners than to black Southerners, What do you think the black Southerners were used to eating?
Chicken.
Pork and corn. Hog meat and hoe cake. That's what they called it back then. Hog meat and hoe cake. Not the starches that the Yankee troops were used to, and the beef. Historian Ira Berlin explains, for Southern black soldiers, the standard ration represented a sharp departure from their customary regime of pork, cornbread, and of course green vegetables. As disease spread, black soldiers who understood in their own way the connection between diet and health indicted the army ration as at once the source of deteriorating health. In addition to complaining about their military diet, I imagine that's common in all soldiers across place and time, black troops also faulted the quantity and quality of their chow. Private Westervelt remarked that the blacks routinely congregated around our cookhouse to get what bean or pea soup we leave. It is allowed in plentiful quantities by government and goes begging with us. But they receive it with eagerness and swallow it with voracity. Bread is served them, the black soldiers, only once a week, they tell me. And in the case of at least one black regiment, the 6th U.S. Colored Troops, a supervisory committee investigated charges that the men received adulterated hardtack. What was hardtack?
Unleavened bread.
It's unleavened bread that oftentimes had all kinds of animals residing therein. And the soldiers, it was called hardtack because the soldiers had to do it with their jaw, and that broke a lot of teeth. As for their weapons, according to the expert on Civil War black troops' weapons, the USCT regiments were issued the best weapons available to fulfill their perceived mission, which was as behind lines supervisory or engineering troops. All too often this translated into such second-class arms as the .54 caliber M1855 Austrian Lorenz rifled musket, or third-class guns including the .69 caliber Austrian rifled musket, or the .69 caliber Prussian musket. Commenting on a failed mission by a black regiment, Colonel Hallowell reported that it fought with nearly worthless old Austrian rifles that were soon after condemned. To compound problems with their outdated and malfunctioning weapons, some black regiments received not only different types of muskets, but also fired different calibers of ammunition. These guns were like hand-me-downs from white troops left over from the Mexican-American War. As late as April 1864, Brigadier General Edward Hinks requested that troops in his all-black division should be issued as effective a weapon as any that are placed in the hands of white soldiers who go into battle with none of the peculiar disadvantages to which my men will be subject. Specifically, Hinks wanted the blacks' unreliable Springfield and Enfield rifles and what he called old Harper's Ferry smoothbore muskets replaced with the latest weapons, Spencer repeating carbines or breech loading rifles. It was imperative, Hinks implored Major General Benjamin Butler, that following the slaughter of black soldiers who tried unsuccessfully to surrender at Fort Pillow, Tennessee in April of 1864, Butler's men, the Army of the James, be able to defend themselves and lessen their liability to capture. Because African American troops cannot afford to be beaten and will not be taken, Hinks added, they deserved the best arm that the country can afford. Black troops knew that they would either be massacred or sold back into slavery. And the point was that they deserved the best weapons, not hand-me-downs, that the U.S. Army could provide. Long before the massacre at Fort Pillow, Tennessee, where rebel cavalrymen massacred 66% of the black soldiers assigned to that federal garrison, black soldiers and their white officers worried about how they would be treated. Would they be treated as prisoners of war or as insurrectionists if captured by the Confederates? In 1887, Joseph Wilson recalled that when he and his black comrades heard the long roll beat, the long drum roll beat to arms, and the bugle sound the charge, they were not to go forth to meet those who regarded them as opponents in arms, but who met them as a man in his last desperate effort for life would meet demons. Every vigilant against slave revolt and concerned that fugitive slaves could provide intelligence to the Union forces. Early in the war, Confederates announced that slaves convicted of insurrection or of aiding the enemy would be executed. This was in line with the punishment meted out to Southern slaves convicted of insurrections long in the history of the American South, dating back to the colonial period. For many Southerners, one expert explains, it was psychologically impossible to see a black man bearing arms in the white mind as anything but an incipient slave uprising, complete with arson, murder, pillage, and rapine. Despite facing all manner of discrimination, as I've suggested today, and degradation, the men of the U.S. colored troops nevertheless carried out their various military duties well, including combat. By war's end, the soldiers participated in a whopping 449 separate military actions, 30, including the one behind me, 39 of which historians consider major engagements, including the one behind me. These included Port Hudson, Louisiana, Milliken's Bend, Louisiana, Fort Wagner in South Carolina, Olustee, Florida, the Battle of the Crater during the Siege of Petersburg, and the Battle of Nashville, Tennessee. The last of the major engagements occurred 157 years ago here at Fort Blakely on April 9, 1865. This battle comprised part of a larger effort by Union forces to wrest control of Mobile, then the remaining Confederate stronghold on the Gulf. Mike Bunn, our own Mike Bunn, states that the presence of black soldiers at Fort Blakely, in Mr. Bunn's words, ranks among the heaviest concentrations of African American soldiers who participated in any one battle during the Civil War. Beyond that, the battle confirmed the bigger meaning of black troops in the Civil War, the recognition by white persons of their humanity, that African Americans could and would fight, and fight courageously to free their enslaved brethren and to help preserve the Union. Captain John Newton Chamberlain, a New Yorker who commanded black engineers in the Mobile campaign, commented on his first impression of his black troops. When I first came among them, they all looked alike to me, and I didn't like to get too close to them. But this repugnance has worn away, and I now can see as much difference among them as among white men. And I have many a man in my company that I should feel more honored taking by the hand than some of my old copperhead friends back home in New York. Another New Yorker, Captain Henry Kreidenweiss of the 77th, observed closely the black soldiers who fought at Fort Blakely. He recalled, "The colored troops in the assault and capture of this place on the 9th have done a great thing for the cause and themselves, and have shown that the Negro will fight, and fight bravely." What then is the significance of the U.S. colored troops? While they left the military with few tangible rewards, the men nevertheless drew great comfort from knowing that they had played a major role in launching what historians today refer to as the Freedom Generation. The following scenario at the conclusion of Fort Blakely, the Battle of Fort Blakely, underscores the dramatic shift of race relations during the American Civil War, what one recent writer has termed the impending reshuffle of the social and political deck. According to an Illinois Union soldier, after the fighting, some of the captured Confederates identified their former slaves, now their captors, and now clad in Union blue. The black troops rebuffed the white soldiers' attempts to reconnect with them, refusing to shake their hands. One of the black soldiers proclaimed, quote, "Stand back there, massa. I's massa now." Yeah. That got the point across, yeah? That, of course, was no small achievement. Few Americans in 1861, not even the great Frederick Douglass and other champions of black enlistment, could have envisioned the broad contributions that Lincoln's black soldiers in blue made to the Union war effort. The president's gradual but ultimately inexorable emancipation plan paved the way for African Americans to take an active role in demolishing slavery. The men of the U.S. colored troops became agents of liberation for their fellow blacks, exhibiting extraordinary bravery, sacrifice, and toughness. Subject to across-the-board discrimination from friend and foe alike, the USCT nevertheless persevered, overcoming innumerable indignities with patience, perhaps not always, persistence, always, most of the time, and pride. As a soldier in the Union Army, a leading historian wrote, "The black soldier proved his manhood and established a strong claim to equality of treatment and opportunity. And in the process, the free blacks and former enslaved men of the USCT surprised a doubting Northern public and their severest and most racist critics." In the end, the vital nexus of Lincoln's program of emancipation and black military service broke the chains of slavery, freed 4 million slaves, and spirited African Americans forward to fight new battles for true freedom and the fruits of American life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, for an outstanding history lesson, well delivered. We've been watching the storm that was out on the Atlantic, and we were a little bit concerned that it might interfere with his flight, and he emailed me a copy of his presentation. I dare say it would not have been as well delivered. So thank you for that. What we're going to do right now, since we're going to open this trail with this gun that you see right here, I'm going to invite everybody that would like to, we can stand up, get a little bit closer, not going to get on top of the cannon though. We're going to open it up with firing the gun twice. Then you'll be able to go explore the trail as you like. The buses will run to 12:15. And our cannon crew will hang around and give another demonstration of this cannon if you'd like to see it. So we're going to come up here, take a few photos, and fire it twice.
You mean we can't ride the cannon like we do?
Pretty much.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Awesome job. It was excellent. No, it's going to be loud.
Very good.
These rocks, they'll throw you.
Tell me your name. Gary Moore. Good to see you. You're such a It's not. It's not. You and I know better. You and I know better.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, good. Good to see you. Isn't that many? Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me.
I'm gonna get you on the other side of my Senator Albritton. Sorry. It's weird, but you've done this before. We're gonna open that a little bit. Wow, that's bright.
Oh, yeah, it should have been crimson over.
It might be a lot bigger.
Certainly not Tennessee.
Yeah, these are all your least favorite colors, huh? Okay, right, you can open it just a little bit. Let's see, hold that right there. All right.
We got Dwight here, okay? There's Darren and Dwight coming. Like this?
There you go, thank you. You've done this before too. Where do you want me to put it? Marilyn and Mr. Dwight will kind of.
Come here and give him a
Your hat, like, your hat.
Y'all can kind of scooch in a little bit. Look like y'all.
That's why I'm wearing my hat, so I don't get rained on.
Alrighty. And everybody chin up, shoulders back,
Thank you.
and stay right there. 1, 2, and 3. Now, real quick, if everybody else will, we can have a bigger group. Like, y'all
Impact
come,
100,
quick.
come on.
Impact 100 in particular.
Hurry,
Chop, chop.
You'll remember
Come on, pop in. Go.
Come on,
right.
Phyllis. Phyllis, fine. Come on, let's get in.
Y'all gonna have to hurry up, like make 2 rows. People going behind, Y'all, hey, y'all, if y'all listen up, I swear I'll get this done real quick. Mr. Sledge, y'all can kind of, we got to get everybody in the frame.
No, I've been enough good.
Come on, Mr. Dwight, you gotta scoot over. Okay, everybody look at me, smile, and then don't move. Okay, I'm gonna count to 3. I want everybody to like hoop and holler and yell. It's weird and it's awkward, but we have 7,000 views in about 4 days when we do this.
Okay, just count quick. Just count 1, 2, 3, quick.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Not the best in the world.
All right. Everybody back behind the gun. We're about to shoot. Everybody back behind the gun.
I'm used to being in the rain. For shooting.
That's right.
We got another one. Thank you, David.
That was supposed to happen.